You know, in Kerala, there's this incredible legend of a woman who was so wronged that her rage literally created a monster. But what if that monster became a goddess and then somehow a superhero? Today, we're diving into the amazing folktale of Kalliyankattu Neeli, and we're drawing from the fantastic research of Dr. Sudhendra S.G. This is a story with some really powerful lessons for all of us, especially for educators and students, about how our myths and stories can change over time.
So, before we jump right in, let's start with the big question at the heart of this whole legend. Can a villain, a true villain, really become a hero? Just keep that question in the back of your mind as we go, because we're about to explore one of the most incredible transformations in all of folklore.
Yeah, this isn't just any old ghost story. It's a three-stage evolution. We're going to see how one single character starts out as this terrifying, vengeful ghost, then morphs into a revered local goddess, and then, you won't believe it, gets reimagined as a modern-day superhero. All right, let's get into it. Our story kicks off, like so many tragedies do, with a simple promise that gets shattered by greed. This is the origin, the very beginning, of the woman who would eventually become Neeli. So first, let's meet Ali. Picture this, it's medieval Kerala, and she is famous for being incredibly beautiful and extremely wealthy. But her life takes a really dark turn when she marries Nambi, the local temple priest, a man who, it turns out, wanted her money way more than he ever wanted her. And then, on a journey, that greed just completely takes over. Nambi murders his own wife, who was heavily pregnant, by the way, smashing her head with a rock just so he could steal all her riches. It was the ultimate betrayal, an act that didn't just end her life, it sparked a rage that would become the stuff of legend. Her very last thought wasn't about sadness or despair. No, it was a vow, a promise, that she would return, and that her return would be furious and fiery enough to burn the world. And that one thought, man, that becomes the fuel for everything that comes next. And believe me, she absolutely did return. This next part of the story is about her rebirth as a Yakshi, which in South Indian folklore is this powerful, often vampiric female spirit. This is the story of her terrifying vengeance. So Ali is reborn. But now she's this fearsome spirit named Neeli, and her brother, who had actually taken his own life out of grief for her, he's reborn right alongside her as Neelan. Together they become this absolute force of terror, draining cattle of their blood, sowing fear everywhere they go. They are pure, raw, untamed vengeance. But here's the thing, Neeli isn't just a mindless monster on a rampage. When she finally tracks down Anandan, who is the reincarnation of the man who killed her, she doesn't just attack, she's smart. She uses her intelligence, masterfully disguising herself, manipulating an entire village with this totally convincing lie, and she traps him. Her vengeance isn't just brutal, it's absolutely brilliant. But okay, once she gets her revenge, you'd think the story ends, right? Nope. This is where the story takes a really fascinating turn. Her time as a figure of pure fury is over, and her transformation into a guardian begins. So how in the world does a vengeful spirit become a guardian? Well, the folklore actually gives us two very different answers. In one version, she does it completely on her own terms. Her rage just kind of cools over the centuries, and she chooses to evolve into a protective, motherly goddess. But in the other, more famous version, that choice is basically taken away from her. She's confronted and subdued by a male priest, a guy named Kalliyankattu Neeli. This fork in the road is so crucial for understanding what this legend is really saying about power. And that right there brings us to the really juicy stuff, the deeper meaning. Especially for educators and students, this is where the tale goes from being just a ghost story to a powerful tool for analyzing culture. It's a mirror reflecting society. All right, let's unpack this, because there's a lot here. First, you can totally see Neeli as a feminist symbol, right? Her fury is this righteous anger of a woman who was betrayed by a system that only valued her for her wealth. Second, her change from monster to goddess shows how a whole culture can reinterpret its fears over time, turning something terrifying into something protective. And finally, that version with the priest, that's a classic example of what scholars call patriarchal hegemony. The idea that a powerful, independent woman is a threat that has to be tamed by a man in charge. It's just incredible, isn't it? this story is so complex, so layered, that it's had this insane staying power, evolving from an ancient folktale all the way into a modern superhero film. I mean, just look at how her story has been told and retold over the years. She pops up as this vampiric force in a classic novel, then becomes the star of a horror film back in the 70s, and a major character in a TV series. And now, in 2024, she's been completely reimagined as the inspiration for a superhero movie. And this is where her transformation just hits its absolute peak. The new Malayalam film Loka takes Neeli and reimagines her as a full-on superhero, basically creating India's very own Wonder Woman. Her journey comes completely full circle, from a local terror to a local guardian, and now to a global protector who's recruited to save the entire world. The villain has finally, officially become the hero. So we end right back where we started, but now with a question I want to leave with you to think about. When we look at a figure like Neeli, we've got to ask, what timeless truths about justice, about rage, and about redemption do our modern superheroes share with these ancient ghosts? The answer, as it turns out, is probably a whole lot.